Welcome to Conversations with Kate, the podcast where we delve into the stories, ideas, and insights that shape our lives. Join me as we engage in thoughtful discussions with fascinating guests from all walks of life. Get ready to listen, learn, and connect. Large language models, or LLMs, have really redefined how we interact with technology, haven't they? Think about applications like chatbots, content generation, even translation tools. They've transitioned from being these sort of experimental tools to becoming critical in so many industries.
Yeah, and they're everywhere now. The speed at which they're being integrated is staggering. I mean, you can't scroll through tech news without another story about some LLM application breaking new ground.
Exactly. But with that ubiquity comes a question we really need to address. Vulnerabilities. The very nature of LLMs, the way they process and generate language, opens them up to unique risks. For example, they can be manipulated with carefully designed prompts to produce harmful or false information. It's something we need to be vigilant about.
Right. And it's not just about misinformation. I remember, Kate, don't laugh, but back when we were working on that AI security project a few years ago, we actually found some I'd say rather shocking cases where systems were tricked into behaving like completely opposite to their intention. Remember that?
Oh, I do, Andrew. And believe me, it's a prime example of what we're talking about. How attackers can use adversarial inputs to essentially mislead these models.
It really blew my mind. I mean, the idea that you could tweak just a few parameters in a prompt and bam, the whole output could shift entirely. So do you think that risk has gotten worse as LLMs advance?
Honestly, yes. As the models get more sophisticated, the attack surfaces grow too. More complexity often means more entry points for potential exploitation. We've got to think holistically about these systems, not just how we use them, but how to secure them against abuse.
Yeah, and I guess it's about balancing that innovation with accountability, right? Otherwise, we're just opening the floodgates without, considering what might come through. Kate, as you mentioned, balancing innovation with accountability is key. It got me thinking, do collaborative tools like Google Docs actually contribute to addressing these vulnerabilities in LLMs, or are they more about streamlining teamwork and convenience?
Oh, they absolutely help. I mean, platforms like Google Docs aren't just about convenience anymore. They're becoming critical in how teams approach LLM security. Take revision history, for instance. It's a feature built for collaboration, but it doubles as an incredible tool for tracking changes when prompts or models are being developed. It allows teams to pinpoint exactly where something might have gone wrong.
I hadn't thought about that. It's like, hang on, it's auditability, right? Like, you can trace the issue back to its start.
Exactly, Andrew. And there's another big advantage, real-time collaboration. Imagine a group of developers or security analysts working together, spotting vulnerabilities as they happen. It's way more efficient than one person trying to do it all after the fact. Tools like this, they've reshaped how teams work proactively instead of reactively.
So it's kind of like turning a group project into a safety net for the software. Love that. Are there any standout examples of this working in the real world?
Oh, absolutely. One recent example I came across involved a company testing internal LLMs for customer service automation. The team used collaboration tools to simulate attack scenarios, things like prompt injection or adversarial inputs. Because they were working together in real time, they caught and mitigated vulnerabilities that could have been exploited at scale.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like the process became its own kind of testing environment.
Exactly. And the beauty of these tools is that they also make security part of the development culture. When teams can easily collaborate, share insights, and stay transparent, everything becomes safer. Not perfect, but much safer.
Makes sense. And I guess the more people involved, the more perspectives you get, right? That's got to increase the chances you catch something.
Exactly. And that diversity in thinking often uncovers issues that otherwise might have been missed with just a single perspective. Andrew, speaking of diverse perspectives, another crucial but often overlooked aspect of securing LLMs is multilingual support. I mean, these models are deployed globally, but how often do we stop and consider the attack vectors in non-English languages?
Right. Honestly, Kate, that's something I've seen firsthand. You know, when I worked with international teams, especially in regions where English isn't the primary language, we'd run into these weird gaps in how tools performed across languages. It could actually leave systems more vulnerable.
Absolutely. Those gaps are where attackers thrive, exploiting weaknesses in less resourced languages. And it's not just about having translation capabilities. It's about building security layers that consider linguistic nuances and cultural context. If we don't, we're only doing half the job.
Yeah, and it's kind of fascinating and frustrating. Back in my Dell EMC days, I remember how our teams in Europe and Asia had to almost create their own fixes to make multilingual systems secure. It wasn't standardized, and that's a huge problem for global organizations.
It really is, and it's why multilingual security needs to become a priority. LLMs are shaping industries everywhere, but if organizations don't invest in these layers for all their markets, they're leaving massive gaps in security. Organizations need to look at this as a fundamental part of their tech strategy, not an optional add-on.
Right, because when breakdowns happen, it's not just a technical issue, it impacts trust too. If users can't rely on the system to work in their language, they're going to start questioning the integrity of the whole organization.
Exactly, and we're already seeing forward-thinking companies implementing robust multilingual support as part of their core infrastructure. But it's a long way from being a standard practice, unfortunately.
So, what's the way forward here? I mean, for companies that are just starting to think about this, are there tools or, practices they can use to speed things up?
Great question. It starts with understanding your audience and the languages they use. From there, leveraging pre-trained multilingual models and customizing them for local needs is key. Coupling that with cybersecurity measures tailored to those same languages creates a much stronger safety net.
Okay, and let me ask this. What about smaller organizations that might not have those kinds of resources? Is this just something big companies can do?
Not at all. That's where open source tools and collaborative platforms come into play. They've leveled the playing field a lot. Smaller teams can now, build and secure multilingual systems without needing the same scale of investment as larger companies. It's not easy, but it's very doable.
That's really encouraging, because it shouldn't just be a luxury for the bigger players. Everyone should have access to safe and secure systems, no matter the language they speak.
Building on that, Andrew, as LLMs become foundational across industries globally, their rapid integration presents unique challenges. The expanded attack surface we've been discussing isn't just a matter of linguistic gaps. It encompasses how these systems evolve and adapt across diverse use cases. It's fascinating, but also brings unprecedented risks.
Yeah, here's the thing. Every time you read about these updates, it feels like they're solving one challenge and creating 3 more potential risks in the process. It's exciting for innovation, but kind of terrifying for security, right?
Exactly. The problem is, the speed of innovation often means security measures are playing catch-up. These models are powerful, but they're also so intricate that even developers sometimes struggle to explain why they behave the way they do, let alone secure them fully.
Right. And that's kind of the heart of it. Like, these systems can process billions of parameters, which makes them super effective, but also, opaque. If you can't fully understand it, how do you protect it?
Precisely. That opacity creates vulnerabilities. Attackers are getting creative, using prompt engineering and adversarial attacks to exploit flaws. It makes proactive, adaptive defense strategies not just helpful, but absolutely essential.
Totally. And here's the wild thing. Every industry is different. A vulnerability in, say, customer service automation might look completely different from one in healthcare. So are we even talking about solutions that can adapt across the board?
We're definitely getting there. But it's a challenge. Building adaptable systems means integrating security at every level, from data pre-processing to model deployment. It's no longer enough to think of security as an add-on. It needs to be part of the entire life cycle.
Makes sense. But let me ask, do smaller companies even stand a chance here? Like, they don't exactly have teams of engineers on standby for this kind of thing, do they?
That's a valid point. Smaller companies definitely don't have the same resources, but that's where collaboration and open source solutions come into play. Organisations can share insights and leverage existing frameworks to stay ahead, even on limited budgets. It's a way to keep the playing field a little more even.
Right, so the opportunity's there, but only if people actually, invest the time and resources to address the risks now before the vulnerabilities spiral out of control.
Building on that idea of collaboration and proactive strategies, one of the key tools we've seen emerge recently is the OIASP Top 10 for LLM applications. It's essentially a consensus-driven checklist of critical risks designed to help developers and organizations identify the most pressing vulnerabilities in their models.
OWASP, classic resource for developers. So they're doing the same thing for LLMs that they've done for web apps, like flagging the most common risks as a starting point.
Exactly. And it's such a universally useful framework. What's really powerful is that it gives both technical and non-technical teams a common language to discuss vulnerabilities. It's not just about coding errors, but also factors like misusing inputs or exposing sensitive data.
Right. So instead of someone panicking over what's gone wrong, it's more like, here's the set of usual suspects to check out.
Spot on. And to complement that, we've got something equally fascinating: LLM red teaming. These are controlled exercises where human adversaries, or red teams, actively try to break the model. They look for unknown unknowns, things you wouldn't normally anticipate during development.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's like running your LLM through a gauntlet to see where it stumbles. But hang on, doesn't that just mean deliberately making it fail?
Well, not quite. It's more about uncovering blind spots before attackers do. Red teaming isn't about breaking the system for the sake of it. It's about identifying and fixing weaknesses so the model becomes more robust.
Got it. So they're playing the bad guys to help the good guys lock the doors? Makes sense. Do they tend to focus on specific risks, or is it kind of a free-for-all?
It depends. Some teams simulate targeted scenarios, like exposing sensitive information through adversarial prompts. Others explore more systemic vulnerabilities, even focusing on how a model might be abused at scale. It's incredibly flexible.
That's smart. And then there's academic research, right? I've seen so much on Archive already. Surveys, experiments, all sorts of theoretical stuff. Does that actually connect with what happens in red teaming or frameworks like OWASP?
Oh, absolutely. Academic research is foundational to all of this. It often maps out the theoretical risks and prediction mechanisms that industry professionals can then apply practically. If red teaming catches what's missed in practice, academic work often sets the stage by identifying those risks in the first place.
So they're kind of feeding off each other, a loop of theory and application.
Exactly. And together, they're building a much-needed ecosystem for spotting vulnerabilities early. It's this collaboration between researchers, developers, and security teams that helps us keep up with the evolving threat landscape.
Right. It's like having multiple layers of defense, each one covering what another might miss. Pretty impressive system when you think about it.
Now that we've touched on those collaborative defense strategies, Andrew, let's dig deeper into some specific attack vectors. For example, prompt injection. This is where an attacker manipulates input prompts to make an LLM respond unpredictably or even maliciously. It's like conveying one thing in the foreground while slipping hazardous instructions in the background.
So, kind of like when someone sneaks in fine print on a contract, you think you're agreeing to one thing, but there's this hidden clause that flips the whole deal.
Exactly. And what's more, there are variations like direct, indirect, and multimodal prompt injections. Each one operates slightly differently, but the goal is the same: to fool the model into doing something unintended. Multimodal attacks, for example, might use not just text, but also sound or images to mislead the LLM.
Wait, hold up. Images and sound? Are we talking about someone drawing little doodles or playing weird audio clips to hack a model?
Not exactly doodles, Andrew, but you're on the right track. Adversarial inputs, whether they're subtle changes in text, audio, or visuals, are specifically designed to exploit how LLMs interpret information. A slight distortion in an image, for instance, could cause the system to misclassify it entirely.
Wow. So these attacks are really just about finding and exploiting like the smallest cracks in the system.
Yes, and those cracks can be anywhere. Take training data poisoning, for instance. Attackers might insert malicious examples into the training set, effectively planting traps. These so-called sleeper agents can even stay dormant until triggered by a specific command or input.
That's kind of terrifying. You could have these Trojan horses sitting unnoticed inside a model, just waiting to spring into action.
Exactly. And what's worse, Andrew, is that it's incredibly hard to detect these backdoors once the damage is done. You've got to catch them early during the training phase, which isn't as straightforward as it sounds.
And then there's data leakage, right? Isn't that another big vulnerability here, especially when models get trained on sensitive or proprietary information?
Yes, it's a huge issue. Models may inadvertently expose sensitive details from their datasets. This could range from private user data to proprietary business information, depending on what the model's been trained on. And it doesn't stop there. Membership inference and data extraction attacks go even further.
Okay, walk me through that. Membership inference, what exactly does that mean?
It's where attackers can determine if a particular piece of data was part of a model's training set. Say you're a healthcare provider and someone asks the model whether a specific record is part of its training. If that's confirmed, you've got a major confidentiality breach.
Wow. And data extraction then, is that like pulling those records out entirely?
Exactly. It's when attackers craft inputs to get the model to reproduce sensitive training data verbatim. It's a serious privacy risk and highlights why it's so critical to monitor and secure what goes into these models in the first place.
It's wild, Kate. It feels like every step of the process, training, deploying, even just using a model, opens up new doors for exploitation. I can't imagine how complex it must be to stay ahead of all this.
It's an ongoing challenge, for sure. But understanding these key attack vectors is the first step in mitigating them. It's not about eliminating risk entirely, which, let's face it, might never happen, but reducing it as much as possible through awareness and proactive measures.
Makes sense, but there's so much here. Where do you even start? Do teams focus on one area at a time, or is it all hands on deck?
Great question, Andrew. One critical starting point is addressing supply chain vulnerabilities. When we talk about those in the context of LLMs, it's not just a technical buzzword, it's a real and growing concern. Think about how much these models rely on external dependencies. A single compromised library or dataset can cascade into major vulnerabilities across the entire system.
Right. So, if one piece of the puzzle gets tampered with, the whole picture kind of falls apart.
Exactly. And it's not just about dependencies, Andrew. There's also the risk of compromised pre-trained models. These aren't built in a vacuum. Many organisations use third-party models as their starting point, and if those models are tampered with, the results can be catastrophic.
Okay, that's wild. Are we talking intentional tampering here, or more of a whoops, something got through the cracks situation?
Both. Attackers could intentionally embed backdoors or malicious behaviours during the training phase, or sometimes it's a case of outdated or poorly audited dependencies that create unknown risks. Either way, the integrity of the entire system hinges on these components.
Wow. And it makes me think, if a system gets hijacked because of one compromised dependency, that's bad enough. But what about, LLM jacking? That's when attackers go after cloud credentials, right? So wait, they're not just stealing resources, they're actively trying to drain the wallet too. That's next level vicious.
It is. Imagine being an organisation suddenly hit with a cloud bill 10 times larger than expected, just because someone's been mining cryptocurrency or running massive unauthorised workloads on your infrastructure. These attacks target more than systems. They're aimed directly at businesses' bottom lines.
It's like a double hit. First they're in your system, and then bam, your costs skyrocket. Is there any way to prevent that, or is it just about catching it early?
Catching it early is definitely part of it, but prevention really hinges on robust credential management, constant monitoring, and setting strict resource usage policies. It's about building defences into your infrastructure, not just reacting after the fact.
Makes sense, but man, it sounds like there's so much that, can go wrong. So between dependencies, pre-trained models, and these cloud exploits, it's overwhelming.
It is a lot, but understanding these risks is the first step toward mitigating them. The key lies in vigilance at every level, from development through deployment, ensuring every piece of the puzzle checks out before it's put on the table.
Right. It's like a chain reaction. One weak link can bring the whole system down.
Exactly, Andrew. And when you think about it, that chain reaction you mentioned applies to so many aspects of LLM development. It's why understanding vulnerabilities, from dependencies to credential attacks, is absolutely critical if we're going to secure these systems against evolving threats.
Yeah, and honestly, Kate, it's been eye-opening. I mean, it's one thing to hear about these risks in passing, but diving into the details, it really puts into perspective how much is at stake here.
Absolutely. And that's why a defense in depth strategy is so critical. It's not just about solving one problem at a time. It's about creating multiple layers of security that adapt and evolve with these vulnerabilities.
Which sounds easier said than done, right? Especially with how fast this space moves.
That's true, but it's also where collaboration becomes indispensable. Researchers, developers, industry practitioners, and even the open source communities, each has a role to play. Alone, we're tackling isolated issues, but together, we can address vulnerabilities in a far more holistic way.
And that collaborative spirit, that's really the key takeaway, isn't it? This isn't just a tech problem, it's a people problem. It's about working together to stay proactive.
Exactly, Andrew. And that's why informed, nuanced conversations like this one matter so much. By raising awareness, we empower not just the developers and researchers, but everyone who interacts with these technologies to think critically and responsibly about their deployment.
Well said. You know, they say knowledge is power, but when it comes to LLMs, I'd say knowledge is also protection.
Very true. And if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this episode, it's the importance of staying informed and engaged. AI technology isn't slowing down, and neither should our efforts to secure it.
Couldn't agree more. And honestly, Kate, it's been a pleasure diving into this with you. I think we've covered quite the spectrum today.
We really have. And on that note, thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time.
Catch you next time.
That wraps up another insightful conversation with Kate. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you've enjoyed our discussion. Until next time.